Hi everyone, I just wanted to do another video, and this one is geared towards talking about my more experimental works. And recently I have been interested in doing different sorts of landscapes, different sort of surreal environments. I am not a great representational artist. I recognize that weakness in myself. That doesn't mean I can't enjoy it. It doesn't mean I can't create something interesting. And I've always had this fascination with the idea of floating landscapes. And so that's a lot of what I've been experimenting with. I've actually thought of doing, like, of trying to do an entire journal filled with these sort of landscapes, particularly with the gold, like burnt orange sky background. For the moment, all these pieces are untitled, and I'll tell you a bit about how I made them. This piece was really out of the blue. I just started kind of with the background. I had a bunch of leftover kind of amber and gold paint, and I wanted to use it, so I just really just kind of threw it down, and then I began painting. And excuse me, what I did was I did the basic shapes, and then I took ink pens, Micron ink pens and gel ink pens, and rounded out some of the overall shapes, which you can see in this light. No, otherwise you can't really tell. That's just from certain angles, where you can see at the bottom of the balloons and the balloon lines, as well as along some of the edges here, and the little airship. The islands themselves are pretty much all painted, and I did use a bit of ink outlining on this one, and then I went over it in acrylic. You know, I love really odd and surreal sort of imagery, and you know, these sky cities just have a real appeal to me. Always have, even like other artists' artwork. And I decided to put kind of a central figure there. As you can see, I kind of messed up some of her shape when I was going over my outline in ink. And, well, not ink, acrylic, then ink. She is still very lovely, I think. And this is very different. I'll probably go back over her arm a bit, around here, and give it more of a look that kind of reflects how our actual arms look a bit more. This one was kind of the same thing. I had a bunch of leftover paint, and I just started experimenting. I've never really gotten how to do clouds. I've been really working on that. I think these actually came out really lovely, particularly with the color scheme that I chose. With this like dark orange punctuated by brief pops of like a dull sort of gold yellow. And it's a lot of small details in this one, like the red sands, the figures almost like watching these other figures wander towards this red mountain across the desert. This sort of sandstorm being kicked up in the corner. I might basically remake this piece on canvas and kind of give it more of a wide scope. So basically, imagine if this half was kind of cut down and condensed, as was this half. Kind of like a widescreen shot from a movie. You know, and here we have these figures, which I drew in ink, just using a regular gel ink pen, like I showed in my last video. Just one of these. And I did use the 10, though it's not really coming into focus. It's like the Pilot 10 and like 10 size pen, which is a bit large. Okay, more than a bit large. It probably wasn't wise, but it looks fine. And I went over it in acrylic. Except the only things that didn't go over in acrylic were some of these finer lines on the city. Because those, like this little dome here, which you can't quite see clearly because this camera isn't smart, you know, that is all pen. And I have this other little piece that I started last night. Well, technically I started it a few days ago, once again, with just doing the gold background. And this one, I've been having a bit of trouble with. One, because it's less silhouettes. Because I like the juxtaposition between, like, detailed landscape and silhouettes. I don't know if it's sort of a weird thing. Part of me wonders if it's the influence of the video game series Dragon Age, because there's part of a game called The Fade where you could see a black city, if that's like my love for that series coming out, along with my fascination with floating landscapes. So this is going to be painted black, and you have this sort of decaying bridge here, with what was once a city just beyond it. You could see some of the buildings that are... Now you can see some of the buildings that are just beyond it. And here, like, I was experimenting with using the ink to kind of define what the mountains a bit more in the background, to show that they're sort of this kind of interwoven mountain range. This one's also going to be gone over in India ink, which is what I used here. And this one and these are going to stay gold. I just really like the way the black lines look, and how it's almost like a chunk of the sky is part of the mountain, which I think is, in a way, very reflective of how the horizon can seem. You know, sometimes you look at a mountain, so it just all feels like one giant painting, not like a real thing. And I have this little kind of house that I went over the roof with India ink, which I think looks really nice. I haven't decided what color I'm going to use for the actual building itself. I was thinking of going over... This is done in ink, so I have to be careful. So I was thinking of like doing another kind of like a light gray thing, and it has like a smudge of yellow, which I think gives it a bit of character, and it'll look really interesting with the ink. And then here, because I messed up, and I was going to leave this entire brown ground white. You have these figures, and she is sort of, you know, haloed because I didn't paint this all before going over in ink. I just drew her, and I drew those rocks, and I painted this, and I'm going to go over the water a bit of this weird sort of lake. I wanted it to be really dark. But yeah, overall, this is my work, and this is part 1 of my experimental video explanations. Thanks. I'll be back with part 2 soon.